Hello world, Great Giza Pyramid, the Subterranean section. What we have here is a picture of the subterranean room with the pre-subterranean room and the shaft, which they call the descending shaft that comes down from the main entrance. So let's go ahead and fill the system with water, and basically you're going to get water that fills down into the system across this whole area, and we'll fill through here and down there and the whole 9 yards. And in doing so, it's going to leave some air bubbles in that location. Now what I neglected to fill in here, and the two most important things, is the granite rock sitting in that room and the granite rock sitting on one of the shelves in the pit. Now, what these two granite rocks are going to wind up being, for lack of a better word, is going to be a cathode and an anode. And off of this one, we're going to have hydrogen that comes up into this little area here, displacing all the other gas, because it's the lightest gas. And what you can pay attention to, and if you look on my website, I have links to it, you can see that this side is just a tiny bit lower than this side. So what that's going to do is it's going to allow this hydrogen to work its way into this room as opposed to going out. Now, the oxygen is going to come up out of the room, fill into the room, because it's going to come up out of the water solution, fill the room, and when those two gases are in there, oxygen being the heavier of the two gases, is actually going to wind its way and work its way out. Now, we can get into what all that gases are doing, but what we're going to focus on is, in either case, whatever gases come up, and whichever one is cathode and anode, some gas is going to work its way out here. And in doing so, it's going to take a bite into that little tooth it's got there. And as it works its way across this ripply surface between the pre-subterranean room and that little tooth, it's kind of looking like a stucco-looking ceiling. The gas won't really create one bubble. It will be multiple bubbles working its way across. But here where it takes root, it's going to wind up growing that bubble. And it's going to grow that bubble until it pops out through here and up. Now, when that happens, you're going to get the hammering effect, which is why John Cadman, in his hydraulic ram pump idea, found the cavitation. And in the older pictures, you can see sediments of dirt. Well, it's kind of like about like that. And they're all at one nice frequency because of that hammering effect. And in this shaft, they look like they're right behind each one of the ribs in the shaft. But, we can worry about exactly what that frequency hammers at and what's going on. But the other thing that occurs is when that hammers down, you got a little bit of weight. It's going to cause some pressure in the room. It's going to work its way back. So you're going to get a little bit of a swishing effect. No matter what's happening, you got this pool of water. And in addition, it's going to wind up filling into here and working its way up into the grotto, which is that picture. And we'll get into that when we get into the subterranean room. But right now, just the basic thing, you're going to have a hammering effect and a swooshing effect. So just keep that in mind as we get to the next phase. Hello world, Great Giza Pyramid, the subterranean system. We like to call the system down under. But as we talked about just a few minutes ago, this rock is venting hydrogen, and this rock is venting oxygen. And the two of them, either way, are making gas that comes out through here, because this is a ripply stucco-type looking surface. The bubbles don't form into one big bubble, but they catch a tooth, and then they grow that bubble across this very smooth area until they come out. That bubbling over as individual bubbles, or large bubbles, makes a hammer effect, which leave those residue that we see in the old pictures from the 1800s before they swept it out and made it all touristy. And they're still found in this shaft just below or after each one of the ribs. It looks like it's just after it. Somebody can get in there and get better pictures. I'd love to know that, but we're going to find when we dig in here, I think there's going to be a couple of magic numbers that come to play, but that'll be another story. So either way, this is causing a little bit of a swishing effect. That hammer goes down, and even though it causes that pattern, that frequency to go through, it still has the push of that liquid water, which will cause some pressure and then wash back. And it's going to cause a little bit of a swishing effect. And meanwhile, this whole thing is filling. So as it keeps filling, it keeps filling. It's what fills one area will fill the other as the water keeps coming down until it gets all the way up to this location up here. When it gets up to there, it saturates this room, and then there's another rock that's up here. And this rock is going to wind up taking over for that rock, because as that swishing effect comes in, there's going to be one time when that swish goes to do its stuff. And the way this room is made, it's kind of like your thumb on a straw, and the water comes up, it lets it out, and lets it back in. Now, it's not done that way with an actual valve. It's done that way with an airlock scenario. There are two inlets into the room from the shaft. You have to, well, you don't have to picture, but if you, I will put a link off of this picture, or if you can find this picture on the internet, it's going to be your best scenario right now. But there's one shaft that comes up, and off of that shaft, actually coming out of the south side, there are two entrances. The bottom one is a big hole. The top one looks to be a rectangle. Either way, when it gets into that room, the water will spill into the room, will fill up till it gets to the top, because then it can't really fill anymore. Water can only go up to the top. Now, technically, there are conduits out of here that they say go out of the south side. So I guess I should, because I drew this twisted, come out of the south side and go up to the top. But because this reaction takes over, we're going to get into this reaction in a second, but the water, when it gets in there, there's also a land bridge. And that land bridge makes it so that when the water gets up there, when it starts to recede, it gets locked. And when it gets locked, when that swishing effect occurs and this water level goes down a little bit because of what happens, this water winds up becoming in a negative pressure, or like I said, it's like your finger on the top of a straw. When you lift the straw up, the water in the straw, whatever you're drinking, is in a vacuum state. It's a negative pressure. It's being sucked up. Now, because this is going to be venting a gas, in this case hydrogen, H2O, out of the system, as it's venting that gas, on a molecular level, it's pulling more up to replace it. So it's just sucking from the bottom here, which has gone through this whole swishing effect or hammering effect, with hydrogen hanging out and these little ribs there, and I think Age of Planck is hanging out there, but that's a whole other story. But in either case, the reaction is going to be oxygen from down here and hydrogen from up here. And the oxygen is going to keep swishing this whole thing, and eventually the reaction is going to exceed the flow rate of the water coming in. And this is going to make the water line recede, and more as this recedes, this is more and more into a vacuum. And as it's more and more into a vacuum, I think we're going to wind up getting to the point where it reaches the 32 feet, because that whole 32 feet per second thingy. That one's feet? No, that one's inches. That one's feet. And we're going to get some more magical play in there, and that will just aid the scenario even more. Anyway, oxygen out of the bottom, continuing that hammering effect, for all eternity. Hydrogen out of here, going up to the top of the pyramid, and that's where it gets its hydrogen source to bond with the oxygen that comes from the ambient air, 21% oxygen by volume, and 21% plus the hydrogen, poof, you get water, and that's how we get water at the top. So we'll get to that when we get up there. Any questions? Please let me know.